Hi, Yavi Caro here. And as I have been mentioning to some of you, I am very excited to finally be finishing my book, Hardcore Soft Skills, A Guide to Work with Humans. This is a practical guide and a roadmap for you as a team member or a manager and help you launch your team for success through practice of the essential skills. To know as soon as the book is released, go to my website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com, and sign up to my newsletter. Now, one of the key items I discuss in the book is diversity and how valuable it is to ensure it is integrated at work for better products and better workplaces. I am sharing here today one of the earlier interviews I had on this podcast I did with author and speaker Karen Catlin on this topic. You will learn a lot about how to become allies when it comes to diversity. Let's listen. Hello and welcome to the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. This is Yadi Caro. In each episode, we'll learn about a different soft skill and lessons on how to apply them. So if you work in a highly technical field and want to get that project going, or if you're getting ready to advance in your career, this podcast is for you. Thank you for joining me in this learning venture. Today, we talk about diversity and more specifically, diversity awareness. While diversity may be seen as part of an initiative a company takes on to ensure people of diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures are treated as equal, diversity is also an individual responsibility. Think of this. If you yourself are a member of a so-called minority group, you do enjoy seeing more people that look like you where you work. You enjoy having an environment where you do not feel treated differently, where you can truly be yourself and be respected. Now, if you are part of a quote unquote majority group, diversity also impacts you a lot. You can also benefit by enriching your life and work with ideas different from your own. You like to get new perspectives. Also, I assume it is important to you to have a place where everyone is treated fairly. Any one of us can certainly ensure we cultivate diversity awareness by becoming an ally. Our guest today, Karen Catlin, is an advocate for inclusive workspaces. After spending 25 years building software products and serving as vice president of engineering at Macromedia and Adobe, she noticed sharp decline in the number of women working in tech. Therefore, she decided to switch gears. She became a leadership coach to help women become leaders and coach men who want to be better allies for underrepresented groups. She is the author of two books on the topic, Better Allies, Everyday Actions to Create Inclusive, Engaging Workplaces, and the book Better Allies Approach to Hiring. In today's episode, we talk about her background and career shift. We also discuss specific steps you can take now to become an ally and help foster diversity. Let's listen. I wanted to talk to you today. The topic, the skill that we're going to talk today, because in every episode we have a different skill that we delve into, and in this episode we're going to talk about diversity. Now, from your perspective, how do you define diversity?
I specifically focus on workplace diversity. So, workplace diversity means that you have an inclusive workplace where people from all sorts of different genders, races, ethnicities, sexual orientations and identities, ages, abilities, and on and on and on. But just a workplace where all of those people from these different backgrounds and different groups, underrepresented groups, really feel like they belong, they can do their best work, and they can thrive. And as a result, the organization thrives as well.
And your background is very interesting as well because you are a tech leader who has worked in the Silicon Valley and you were in leadership positions. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and your career as a tech leader?
Sure, yes. And I started as an engineer. I have a computer science degree. I used to write code for a living. And over time, I did move into leadership roles. Most recently, I was a vice president of engineering at Macromedia, and then at Adobe after Adobe acquired Macromedia. I spent about 25 years working in tech, building software products, and that definitely informed what I do today in terms of all my work on being an advocate for more inclusive workplaces, because I felt I had a wonderful career. By all accounts, it was absolutely wonderful what I was able to do, how much I enjoyed it, what I accomplished. But I noticed a decline happening in gender diversity in the tech industry during the 25 years I spent in it. And that led me to really wanting to do a whole lot more to change that, like the negative direction it was going in, and then also start to look out for people from other underrepresented groups.
It's interesting that you mentioned that there was a decline, because you would like to think that in the past there was less representation and that we're going towards a better future of more diversity. Now, when you started, so was there more presence of women in the field and then you noticed a decline?
Yes. So I am going to share the date that I graduated from college with. So your listeners, if they're good at math, they'll be able to tell how old I am. That's okay. But I graduated with my computer science degree in 1985. And 1985 was this peak year for women studying computer science, at least in the United States. I'm less familiar with the data worldwide, but in the United States, it was a peak year. And that year, over 37% of the computer science and information science degrees went to women. And after 1985, after I graduated, like not 50-50, but it was a really good representation. After that year, it did decline to a low of about 17%. Now, the good thing is there is an uptick happening. There has been such focus on making sure that our young women, as they are growing up, going through school, that they are encouraged to study STEM, that they there are some things that have been changed around the classes, the programs, the university settings and so forth to welcome more women, as well as people of color and so forth. But there's been a lot of focus and it is paying off, but we're not yet back to that ratio that I experienced when I was in college. We're not there yet. So we still have work to do.
Now, when you started, after you graduated in college, that you noticed it was a peak year, what happened when you entered the workplace? Did you notice any particular differences or the way women were treated or any welcoming environment?
Yeah, not initially. Not initially in terms of my first job out of school was amazing. And there was a lot of support. I really felt that it was an equal playing field, that everyone was supported to do their best work. I really felt that. But then as I started moving on, navigating different environments, different bosses, different colleagues, different situations, I definitely have my fair share of stories I can tell. You know, one being I was on a business trip and my great grand boss's boss, like my boss's 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 boss, way up in the channel, literally made a pass at me in the back of a taxi cab.
Oh, wow.
Like awful, I know. And then did the same thing in front of the entire team at a holiday party. Awful. Another thing that happened is my partner, Tim, and I, when we first moved to Silicon Valley, we had very similar interests, backgrounds. We almost had identical resumes at that point. This goes back a while. We'd gotten the same computer science degree from the same university, had done similar work. Our resumes were almost identical. And during our interviews, we did interview at the same companies. And one day in particular, we were interviewing in side-by-side conference rooms for software engineering roles. And we weren't competing with each other. They were hiring a few people. So we were both interviewing. And afterwards, we kind of debriefed, like, how do you think it went? You know, that type of thing. And I was shocked by how difficult the questions were that he was asked. The interviewers asked him really tough technical questions. And then they might like walk a couple steps and come in to interview me, and they softballed the questions. They asked very simple questions. So it's almost like in just a few steps it took to walk from one conference room where he was being interviewed to where I was being interviewed, they lowered the bar for me because I guess they thought I couldn't handle the tough questions. So those are just the two stories of things
Wow.
I've seen firsthand, witnessed firsthand, and definitely drive me to what I'm doing today.
You wrote the book Better Allies, which I highly recommend to listeners to read, because I really enjoy the book in the sense that it is, I read a lot in terms of diversity overall and diversity initiatives that take place in the organizations, but you take an approach of advising people who are in a position perhaps to make a difference and may not be necessarily part of those minority groups, to kind of drive change. What made you take that angle and write the book?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for asking. Um, After I left my first career in tech behind, I decided that I wanted to become a leadership coach focused on women working in tech. I wanted to help them grow their careers, learn more leadership skills, and stay in tech if that's where they wanted to be. But early on, while I was building my coaching practice, I realized I had a huge problem. And the problem wasn't with my clients, they're amazing. The problem was that they were all working in tech companies where the closer you got to the C suite, to the CEO, just the maler and paler it got.
Mhm.
And I always say, with all due respect to anyone who's listening who is male and or pale, I am white myself. That's just what the demographics look like. I don't want to shame and blame anyone here. I just want to let people know, like most companies are white white men in leadership roles, and they are not the true meritocracies that I think most white men think they are, that you get ahead based on your merits, based on your work, because the tech companies had better representation, better diversity at the entry level, less so at the top of the companies. Um, so at that point, I realized that really to truly help my clients, I had to make their companies more inclusive. In fact, I had to make all of tech more inclusive. And I'm just one person. It's kind of a big job to think that one person can have an influence over all of tech. But I decided, like, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to do something. And I didn't want to just have companies have these top-down diversity and inclusion initiatives, which are important. But I wanted to empower people in whatever role they're in whatever corner of the organization, in whatever conversations they might be having. I wanted them to be ambassadors of a more inclusive workplace culture. So to change the world, I mean, what's the first thing anyone does these days? They start a Twitter handle.
Yes.
In 2014, I started the Twitter handle called @BetterAllies. And my goal was to share these simple everyday actions anyone could take to be more inclusive in their everyday kind of world. Like anything they were doing, these were things people could do regardless of their title, regardless of their role, regardless of their position, but to use any privilege they have, because they might be men, they might be white, but any other form of privilege they have, to speak up and be an advocate for the people around them who don't have that same privilege, who might be experiencing some lack of inclusion.
And since in this podcast, we focus a lot in terms of providing some key tips of advice so people could start cultivating that. And aside from definitely recommending that the listeners read your book, could you share one or two of those simple things that people could start doing in order to foster a more inclusive work environment?
Yes, I'm happy to share a few. I'm going to talk about meetings, what happens in meetings that's not inclusive, because we spend so much time in meetings, right? And definitely whether it's in person or
Yeah.
virtual because of the pandemic. But in meetings, there's a long list of things that happen that impact women, especially, and women of color, but also people from other underrepresented groups. Things like the interruption, which many people call the man-terruption, regardless. But I think just an interruption is really what we should talk about, because anyone could be doing the interrupting. But it is a well-documented, researched area that men tend to interrupt women more than the other way around. So look out for those interruptions when they happen, and stop them in their tracks with a simple, hey, I'd like to hear Yadi finish her thought. Like it's fine to speak up like that and say that. And you can do that, by speaking up yourself, by putting it in a chat, if it's a virtual type of thing, any way you think you can have your voice heard. But all it takes is a simple, hey, I'd like to hear Yadi finish her thought. Another thing that happens in meetings is meeting housework. Meeting housework are things that have to happen for the meeting to be successful, but they aren't part of anyone's job. Things like taking the minutes or the tracking the action items, or, everybody isn't here. Who can text so-and-so or Slack them to get them all dialed into the meeting? Or, we really need to have a follow-up meeting. Who can look at everyone's calendars and find a good time to meet? In person, it may be who can order lunch, or who can clear the leftovers and bring them to the kitchen break room for everyone to have. These are all examples of housework tasks that, again, are important. They have to happen. But if they aren't part of someone's job description, then they tend to fall on women's shoulders, and especially women of color. And that's awful because it puts a woman in a subservient role to her peers, gives her busy work to do, so she's not actually participating in the meeting as a full participant. And so if you see this type of thing, what's an ally to do if they see office housework going to women, and especially women of color, is, speak up. And you can say something like, hey, Sue took the notes last time. How about I do it this time? Set up more of a sharing, spread the wealth kind of thing, or set up a rotation. Like, I think this is an ongoing meeting. I think we should have some roles and responsibilities that we share and we rotate through. So those are a couple of examples. Yeah. I could go on forever. I'll tell you about meetings, but I'll just stop there.
Yeah, that's great, particularly now with online meetings that we spend so much time in those. And sometimes there are those people that want to take over the discussion, and it's kind of difficult to kind of insert yourself and interrupt. So that's really key advice to kind of give the voice to others. Yeah, certainly. Thank you for sharing. I did wanted to share, to ask you about something you mentioned in the book about the difference between being an ally and the perception and that being a knight in shining armor, like somebody from the non-minority group who's going to come and try to kind of become the knight or the savior, I guess, for the people in the minority. And that is not what the book is about. And I wanted to ask you to expand a little bit on that concept.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about this, because it's important to understand, and it can be a little tricky to navigate, I think, as well. So I think you were fabulous describing it. Someone could be a knight in shining armor, riding in on their steed to save the damsel in distress, to save that person, to be the savior. And what I explore in the book is comparing that to what an ally really does. A knight is doing kind of a one-off thing that may make it all about themselves. Like, look how great I am. I'm going to save this person. I'm going to help this person. And an ally should be kind of working behind the scenes a little bit more, not making it about themselves, and looking for systemic change that they can put in place, so they're not just helping this one person, saving this one person. I used air quotes there, saving this one person, but they're looking how to change the system so that more people have a more inclusive experience. Let me give an example here to break it down, make it real. Let's say you're in a hiring committee meeting and you're talking about a candidate. And this is from my book, one of the examples in the book. Let's say someone says, I just can't put my finger on it. I don't think Willie would be a great fit here. I just don't think he'd fit in. I don't think it's quite what we're looking for. Okay. Now, the knight in shining armor may say, hey, I disagree. I think Willie would be fabulous. And in fact, I volunteer to be Willie's mentor. I will mentor him and make sure he is successful. Okay. Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty good. And so I want to encourage that. Don't not do that. Do it. But at the same time, look for the systemic change that could be put into place. And in this situation, if there is an interview process that's not clear about what you are looking for, that someone can actually say, I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't think they'd quite be a culture fit or something. That's what you want to look at. You want to look at how can we change our hiring process so that we are very objective, not subjective, that we have very clear questions that we're asking and a clear rubric for evaluating candidates so that we remove that bias that can come in of like, I don't know, they're just not going to fit in. Like, just get rid of that by having a very clear process and very objective ways of interviewing and evaluating candidates.
That's great advice. Having those clear guidelines on hiring, because that could help eliminate some of those subconscious bias that we all have, basically. So that's very useful. I also wanted to ask, in terms of since you have worked with many companies and leaders, and we've seen some diversity initiatives that may or may not go well in some companies, and training, like diversity training. So what are some of those not so great ways to implement diversity that you have seen that perhaps either leaders or companies should simply reevaluate?
Yeah. I'm doing a lot of speaking about my book, and which I love doing. And I do hear during kind of the prep calls of, this is what we've tried before, and we need to do something different because it didn't work. And the thing they've tried before is often some sort of training. We rolled out training, and the training, whatever, I mean, there's lots of great training out there. I'm not saying there's any, and I deliver some of this training myself. But the thing is, the training often becomes a check mark of, yep, we did it. We offered the training, or we took the training, and now we're done. We are more diverse. We're better prepared. And unfortunately, that's not going to work, because this whole approach of being more inclusive, of really looking for the situations where people are not included, where they are not being able to do their best work. These situations are nuanced, they're frequent, they are, sometimes you're going to see them every day, sometimes it's going to be just every so often. And so this whole notion of being a better ally it's a journey. And this is my point of my book, is you can't just read my book and be done. You have to have ongoing learning. I truly hope, in fact, that people read my book and then refer to it. Oh, we're going to be putting on an event. Let's go read that chapter and refresh our memory of what it means to be a better ally at events. Or we are doing a big hiring push. Let's go read that chapter again. It's a journey of learning, making some mistakes, being comfortable with that, knowing when to apologize, and identifying what you're going to be doing differently. And I'll tell you too, Yadi, like, I'm on this journey too. I don't know it all. I am constantly learning something new every day, every week. And I'll tell you, I share all of that on Twitter as I learn things. I also have this weekly newsletter I send out because I have learned so much, and I want to share it with people who are on this journey with me. In fact, I'll just give a little shout out for my newsletter here.
Yeah.
It's called 5 Ally Actions, and it comes out every Friday. And it's like my book. It's like very actionable stuff, 5 different things about what has happened in our world, news, or just things I have learned. So I love sharing that every week, and people can find it at betterallies.com and subscribe.
How do you see the future of tech overall? Do you feel optimistic? A lot of work to be done? How do you see generally in the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, I am definitely an optimist. The glass is half full over here. So I'll share that with you. I am optimistic. But what you said is right on. It's spot on. It is, we still have so much work to go. So what I'm optimistic about is that there is an awareness that I have never seen before. When I think, and the conversations I have, so many companies who do have these top-down diversity and inclusion initiatives, one of the pillars of their strategies tends to be, we need to create a culture of allyship or something along those lines. So I am very optimistic that there's top-down focus and measurements happening on how they're going to measure that they have a culture of allyship. And I see a hunger almost by people who are individuals at organizations who probably have the mindset of I'm a decent human being. I am concerned about the lack of inclusion in our workplace and maybe even in our world. We saw this with Black Lives Matter this past summer, summer of 2020, and ongoing. Just this outpouring of support, concern, this desire to do things differently. We saw on the bestseller lists of books, all sorts of titles about anti-racism and anti-white supremacy. And I think people are hungry for this material and they want to know what they can do individually. So that makes me very optimistic that not just tech, but workplaces of all kinds in different industries, organizations around the world will be filled with more people who have this mindset of being inclusive, and it's going to be a better place for us all.
Certainly. I like your outlook, and I do feel optimistic as well that we can all, if we all do our part just a little bit, that definitely things can always be improving for increasing diversity. So I truly appreciate your time, and the work that you're doing is certainly admirable. So what's the best way that people can get in touch with you?
Yes, people can go to betterallies.com and find out more about that work. And then I also have a website, KarenCatlin.com, which has a contact page on it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. If you have learned something today, share this episode with others. To find out about new episodes and skills to learn from, subscribe via your favorite podcast platform, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. For more resources, visit our website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.